This is the Surly Grognards for July 14th, 2014. This is Peter Bowman, and as usual, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Eric Carlson. How are you doing tonight, Eric?
I'm doing all right.
Most excellent. So, as has been the case fairly often recently, the topic for tonight was inspired by a viewer email. We love getting those because they often do inspire topics. And this one's from Ian Carricker. I believe that's Tachi Glassbender in the chat. I can talk.
Words are hard. It's okay. It's hot and humid today.
Yeah. Ian had a very good question which we'll answer at the end of the show. But Ian also had a little section sort of talking back about something we mentioned in a previous episode where we were talking about our complete and utter befuddlement at the fact that in early editions of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons that non-humans had level caps. Well, humans
Still
didn't.
just... Why?
Well, apparently in the first ed DMG, Gygax actually somewhat explains this.
Okay.
And this is first I'm going to read what Tachi wrote, and then he did a bunch of copying, pasting, and such, and typing out what Gygax said after that. I will read that over also. So, also, having read the DMG, I found the section where Gygax defends the extreme regulations against non-human characters and the like, which, when summarized, is basically entails that Gygax felt people lacked the imagination to be capable of playing such a thing, and also humans make fiction work, so everyone should be human. It also had a large part dedicated to how people wanting to play a monster character were usually just trying to dominate the game, which seemed like a really limited and narrow viewpoint.
As a guy who always tries to play a monster character, that's not the truth at all.
I know, but you have to remember this. This is back in the 70s, and
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
I've copy-pasted the best I could in the section below if you need a reminder of how it was, but I was wondering if you guys agreed that by his own logic, humans should be getting stamped out of existence by all the other races for fear of oppression and destruction. Alright, so I'm going to read some quotes from Gygax here. On occasion, one player or another will evidence a strong desire to operate as a monster, conceiving a playable character as a strong demon, a devil, a dragon, or one of the most powerful sort of undead creatures. This is done principally because the player sees the desired monster character as superior to his or her peers and likely to provide a dominant role for him or her in the campaign. A moment of reflection will bring them to the unalterable conclusion that the game is heavily weighted towards mankind. Advanced D&D is unquestionably humanocentric, with demi-humans, semi-humans, and humanoids in various orbits around the sun of humanity. Men are the worst monsters, particularly high-level characters such as clerics, fighters, and magic users. Whether singly, in small groups, or in large companies, the ultra-powerful beings of other planes, enough to strike fear into most characters, let alone the very gods, are more fearsome than the 3Ds of demigods, demons, and devils are themselves are brought into consideration. Yet there's a point where the well-equipped high-level party of adventurers can challenge a demon prince, an archdevil, or a demigod, while there might be some near or part humans with the group so doing. It is certain that the leaders will be human. In cooperation, men bring about the ruin upon monsterdom, for they have no upper limits as to level acquired from power from spells or items. The game features humankind for a reason. It is the most logical basis in an illogical game. Okay, I gotta stop for a second just after that sentence.
But well, I'm sorry. I think that just bounced off my brain. What did it say?
The game features humankind for a reason. It is the most logical basis for an illogical game.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear what you said.
It is the most logical basis in an illogical game.
I know you're saying something. There are syllables coming out.
From a design aspect, it provides sound groundwork. Okay, that makes sense. From a standpoint of creating the campaign milieu, it provides the most readily usable assumptions. From a participation approach, it is the only method for all players. Are, after all is said and done, human. Okay, the players, yes, and it allows them to the role with which they are most desirous and capable of identifying with. Okay. From all views, then, it is enough fantasy to assume a swords and sorcery cosmos with impossible professions and make-believe magic. To adventure among the weird is fantasy enough without becoming that too.
fairly limited.
And there's some stuff in the chat which we'll get to in a minute. Consider also that every dungeon master worthy of that title is constantly at work expanding his or her campaign milieu. Okay, fair enough. The game is not merely a meaningless dungeon and an urban base around which is plopped a dreaded wilderness. Each must design a world piece by piece, as if a jigsaw puzzle were being handcrafted, and each new section must fit perfectly the pattern of the other pieces. Faced with such a task, all of us need all of the aid and assistance we can get. Without such help, the sheer magnitude of the task would force most of us to throw our hands up in despair. By having a basis to work from, and a well-developed body of work to draw upon, at least part of the task is handled for us. This is okay. This is logical. I'm not sure what it has to do with anything, but we'll see. There we go. Had to scroll down a bit. When history, folklore, myth, fable, and fiction can be incorporated or used as reference for the campaign, the magnitude of the effort required is reduced by several degrees. Yes, this is true. Even actual sciences can be used, geography, chemistry, physics, and so on. Alien viewpoints can be found, of course, but not in a quantity and often not in much quality either. Those works which do not feature mankind in a central role are uncommon. Those which do not deal with men at all are scarce indeed. To attempt to utilize any such basis as the central, let alone sole, theme for a campaign milieu is destined to be shallow, incomplete, and totally unsatisfying for all parties unless the creator is a Renaissance man and all-around universal genius with a decade or two to prepare the game and milieu. Even then, how can such an effort rival one which borrows from the talents of genius and imaginative thinking which came to us from literature? Having established the why of the humanicentric basis of the game, has he? You'll certainly see the impossibility of any lasting success for a monster player character. Really? The environment for adventuring will be built around humans and demi-humans for the most part. Similarly, the majority of participants in the campaign will be human. So unless the human desires a character which will lurk alone somewhere and be hunted by adventurers, there are only a few options open to him or her. Okay, that makes a certain amount of sense.
Yeah, okay, that I can see that. I've dealt with this myself.
A gold dragon that can human shape. Okay, so yeah, they're talking. Admittedly, some of what he's talking about with the monster characters are like the truly absurdly powerful, like things like gold. Fine, yes, those are people who want to be special snowflakes for the most part.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever. Okay, I have kind of wanted to play a dragon, but never to like that. Never for those reasons.
Yeah, well. Says common choice for monster characters. If alignment is stressed, it might be discourage the would-be gold dragon. Oh God, alignment. Would-be gold dragon. If it is also pointed out that he or she must begin at the lowest possible value. Yeah, okay, yeah. And the time and accumulation of retention of great massive wealth will allow any increase in level/age. The idea should be properly squelched. Yes, because we want to make sure our players are not having the fun they want to have. If even that fails, point out the natural bent of dragons is certainly for their own kind, if not absolute solitude. So what could a solitary dragon play in a group of participation game made up of non-dragons / dragon non-player characters? Yeah, okay. Dragon non-player characters, sure, as...
Boom, done right there.
What was that?
Draconic anthropologist. Boom, done.
Yeah.
I'm playing a gold dragon now. Screw you.
Alright, so dragon non-player characters, sure, as player characters, not likely at all. As the other sorts of monsters as player characters, you as the DM must decide in the light of your own aims and style of your campaign. The considered opinion of this writer is that such characters are not beneficial to the game and should be excluded. Note that exclusion is best handled by restriction and not by refusal. Enumeration of the limits and drawbacks which are dependent upon the monster character will always be sufficient to steer the intelligent player away from monster approach. For in most cases, it is only thought of as a likely manner of game domination. The truly experimental type player might be allowed to play such a monster character for a time so as to satisfy curiosity, and then can be moved to non-player status and still be an interesting part of the campaign. And the player is most likely to desire to drop the monster character once he or she has examined its potential and played that role for a time. Okay, Eric,
Yeah.
brace yourself for this next part, I'm thinking.
All right.
The less intelligent players who demand to play monster characters regardless of obvious consequences will soon remove themselves from play in any event, for their own ineptness will serve to have the players or monsters monsters or traps finish them off. So you are virtually on your own with regards to monsters as player characters. This has all been about monsters, not just demi-humans.
Right.
You have advice as to why they are not featured, why no details of monster character classes are given herein. The rest is up to you, for when all is said and done, it is your world, and your players must live in it with their characters. Be good to yourself as well as to them, and everyone concerned will benefit from a well-conceived, well-ordered, fairly judged campaign built upon the best imaginative and creative thinking. Okay. So, Gygax actually has a few good points in here.
Yeah.
Very good points.
The balance one, it certainly won.
Absolutely.
No, you can't play a Lich.
No, stop that. Especially
I
with
understand that.
Especially at the start of a normal campaign.
Absolutely.
Like if you're starting at a high power campaign, I guess. But
even then, it's really dubious to play a Lich. Just thinking of the motivations for the Lich to go on this theoretically heroic campaign.
Right. But yeah, so this was, as I said, that was mostly talking about monsters, and it doesn't really touch on the whole demi-human restricted level things, but you can read into that from there, I think.
Yes.
And I do understand part of what he's talking about, and there is an element of, I'm trying to think how to phrase this. Without being remarkably condescending.
Go ahead and be condescending.
Okay, well there's a distinct level of distinct element, especially early on, of special snowflake syndrome with wanting to play weird, wacky races. It's not 100% true, but it exists. It's not true for everybody. And I will say, I always find it really fascinating how in the majority of campaign worlds, where they have the assumption that humanity is the dominant species, how often the campaign will have the party will be almost entirely non-human.
Yeah,
I always find that really interesting. And
at the same time, if you're on top, why are you going out hunting for adventure and treasure and power?
I guess. I don't know. It's just...
I mean, it's...
I don't know. It's one of the things I've always struggled with.
Yeah, I totally understand, like, the whole, why aren't there more humans in my nominally human-based campaign? I get that. I understand that entirely. Or a bit... more than a little guilty of it with the Iron Kingdoms game, honestly.
Yeah, Eric, I can tell you why at least for me, back in first and second edition AD&D days, why I rarely played humans.
Because they sucked.
Because the other races were more powerful.
Yeah,
it was purely mechanical reason. Honestly, for the most part, I often will play humans in a lot of games. I'm one of those people who actually generally prefers to play humans, as a general rule of thumb. There are exceptions from time to time. I do enjoy playing dwarves, and I've played elves, a bunch of elves here and there.
Heretic.
Not really. I've made no bones about that. I don't actually have a real problem with elves.
Yeah, I know. It was required and expected.
I know. You hate elves. That's fine. But yeah, I mean, I think of all the old core races in D&D, I think I've played all of them at some point or another.
Yeah. I mean, I have too. I mean, I went through the elf phase. Everyone does, or at least everyone seems to. And yeah, I mean, I've played all the core races, including the old half-orc, and half-orcs still are the best. But like, yeah, I've very rarely end up playing humans if there are other options available, because it's not so much that humans are boring. Humans are certainly not boring, particularly in a lot of pre-published campaigns where humans are often the most interesting thing there. It's just I love monsters.
Right. I know, Eric, and you enjoy playing the monster. I get
Yes,
that.
I love being the monster, even if he's only physically and not a moral monster. The I like being gribbly. I like that. It's given the option, I always play something fairly monstrous. Not necessarily like big ass crazy like gold dragon elder with like my laser beam breath or what have you. But like, yeah, orcs are available. Yeah, I'll play a fucking orc.
Yeah.
Or kobolds or Yuan-Ti. I've never actually played a Yuan-Ti, but I'm just pulling something real obscure out of
I've
my
not played
ass.
one either, but that's because I played very little Spelljammer.
Yeah,
Um,
or whatever the spider eels are. I always thought they would be cool to play.
the
I have no idea what their rules are mechanically, but they're just sort of neat.
Nigoi, I think
It begins with an N, I think.
it's Nigoi, I think.
Nigoi, yeah, I think you're right.
It's been a long time since I looked those guys up, but yeah, they're weird. But yeah, I'm just sort of sitting here thinking, like, it's. But yeah, I've played humans, I've played halflings, I've played dwarves, played elves, I've played gnomes. And I do think that Gygax. I will say the other thing Gygax sort of implies in there is part of the reason that I think he tried to just sort of focus things on humanity is it's very difficult for a lot of people to, assuming that the other races are not just, Star Trek aliens, that are
Right.
human with forehead disease, what have you. It's
But
hard.
that's part of the fun of
I know, but his point
that's
is
what really attracts me to him is playing something so
not human. I know, but
so alien.
but my point is that his point, that what he's trying to say is, what I think he's trying to say is that most people can't do that and actually play them as anything but humans with funny foreheads.
I certainly understand that. I mean,
And so if you're trying to get a game world in which the non-humans feel non-human is tricky.
yeah, certainly.
Especially if the players are playing them as not that way. And I kind of understand what he's saying. The problem is that he's full of shit. Because the game master has to play those characters too, and he has to play a lot more of them.
Yes, and there's also the fact that you're never going to get good at it if you don't try.
Absolutely. Again, I'm not really defending Gygax here. The problem is and the reason that the races, the real reason, honestly, in my opinion, that the demi-human races, and demi-human is a interesting term for them,
Yeah,
if you really think about it.
less than human. Yeah,
Yeah. But like the reason they have the level limits is a balancing factor, nothing else.
yeah, because they were more powerful in first and second ed.
Right.
I mean, hands down, they simply were.
So okay, and honestly, for most of the level range you're gonna that most people play in, the level limits don't really matter. Which begs the question: why are they there?
I don't know.
Because, like, okay, so we'll work on the assumption that most campaigns finish up before the non-humans hit their level caps for their favorite classes. Fine. Then the level caps don't actually impact the game in any way, shape, or form. If they do impact the game in some way, it means the campaign is going past that point, then you are restricting their ability to continue having fun, and
Right.
they really can't play those characters, so why's the limit there in the first place? If the campaign's going to go past that point, there's no point in having them as playing those races.
It's
Bad design.
It's bad design, absolutely, and I can forgive it because
Well, yes,
it's
it was
a
the
prototypical RPG. There was nothing like it before.
Yeah, it was the late 70s, early 80s. I mean,
Yeah.
much else was out at that point. So, I mean, yeah, I understand.
My beef is that they kept it in second ed.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of actually, balancing the races.
Yeah,
But, honestly, not much in second edition was balanced to begin with, so...
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. And part of it is that the game wasn't designed as a... despite the fact that it was designed by a bunch of people who were tabletop wargamers.
Yeah, yeah.
I think part of it is they intentionally decided they didn't want to have to think about balance. They just wanted to play the game and have fun, and not
And
really.
that's okay. I get that. That's cool.
And and there's a lot of game design theory. Game design has changed immensely since these games have come out.
Oh, thoroughly. Yeah. We've learned.
Yeah, and they were a great starting point. I as much as I run down how much I think second ed and first ed are terrible now, I had a lot of fun playing them back in the 80s and 90s.
I had tons of fun playing second ed back in the day. I look at it now and I cringe at the very idea of playing second ed. But yeah, no, I totally had fun playing it at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I freely admit that.
I just don't have rose-colored glasses when it comes to it.
Yeah, looking back at I look back at it, and part of it is at some point I stopped playing second ed for a long while after I discovered GURPS, because there was no real sort of thought process that went into that. It was just I discovered GURPS, I played it, and I really enjoyed it. And then I went back and played some second ed after that, on and off here and there, and had fun with it still, because I can have fun in almost any system with the right group of players. I mean,
Yes.
I've said this numerous times, but it's interesting. After having played a lot of other systems, going back to it, and honestly, playing later editions of D&D have completely spoiled my ability to go back to earlier editions of D&D.
Yes.
At this point, I look back at them and I'm like, yeah, no. I mean, I've done it. I mean, I played. My friend Peter Shaw ran. The Thursday game he ran for a long while was a couple of years of second at AD&D.
Yeah, and I played in a first ed campaign not long ago, and my God, that was grating. But
I had a
great group of players with a great game master, and I had fun, despite the fact I was wrestling with the system the entire time.
Yeah, honestly, for me, it was the system didn't really get in my way that much. I mostly just found, I was like, okay. The problem for me is I didn't form a really big attachment to my character early on, because of how lethal and random your death could be in old D&D games. So I was like, I was working on assumption my character's probably going to die at some point, especially as I was the only tank in the party at the time.
Right.
So the odds are I'm probably going to get killed at some point because I'm taking most of the damage. And I never really clicked into him because I just didn't want to bother. So I'll probably have to make a new character at some point. I'd rolled some up, and I never did because I actually survived because the one and only good stat I had was my Constitution. It was the first set of characters we went really old school.
3d6
in order
as
3d6 in order.
Yeah.
Yeah. Though Peter did allow, or my friend Peter Shaw did allow for us to swap a 13 in for any one stat. Now, mind you, my first set of stats I rolled were so bad that Peter said, "Yeah, re-roll those."
Right.
I think my highest stat was a 10, and most of them were below 7.
Damn, you're a cripple.
It was the most pathetic character I have ever seen. I was like, "Oh my god."
Why did I go out adventuring? Why don't I just stay home and mop the stables?
Honestly, that was that's why we actually went to
Right. Let you re-roll.
Yep. And so the character I ended up re-rolling was I got a 16 in Constitution, 15 in Constitution. I made him a dwarf, so boom, done. 16.
Right. I just... Yeah, I mean, I can go back to 3.5 fairly easily from 4th. And personally, I find them interchangeable because there's very little in common with them beyond the name. Mm-hmm. If they didn't share the name, I never would have thought they were designed by the same company, honestly.
I disagree with that. There's a lot of stuff in 4th Ed that I think really feels like D&D. for me at least.
Well, the whole rolling die 20 and like the different size
It's
dice for damage. But so many other games have done that also that I've played. That doesn't feel uniquely D&D. It just feels like an artifact more than anything else.
honestly, for me, honestly, a lot of it is the trappings of it. The class names, the monsters that you fight.
Oh yeah, certainly. I'm just talking purely mechanically.
Yeah, well, I that was true for third edition. Third edition
Yeah.
threw virtually everything out the window before that. So honestly, at that point, I'm like, yeah. And honestly, my personal take on it is good.
Yeah.
It-
Yeah,
so
I'm fully aware that's your personal take, and yeah, throwing out everything from second ed, fucking awesome. Bringing back my beloved half-orcs, then throwing them out for extra elves. Friggin' 3 different kinds of elves in fourth ed. 3.
three. I only can think of two.
Half elves, which count.
Half elves are not elves, Eric, and you know it.
Half elves count.
No, they don't.
Elves, and elves that are so elfy that they out-elfed the elves.
I will acknowledge that the Eladrin elves are both elves. But I will point out that there was always a distinct mechanical difference between various elf types in virtually every.
Yeah, certainly, but you had. I'm talking purely about the pure, like the first player's handbook,
Yeah.
and there was an elf. You could play a high elf in second ed D&D, the PB.
Right, and the second and third books had the second ed player's handbook only had elves. True. Third
Right.
ed actually had the option rules for high and wood elves.
Did they have a separation for them?
I think so, but it's been a while. I'd have to look at it, but
I'd have to dig it out. I don't remember that.
but yeah,
But it was still one entry.
yeah, fair enough. But eh.
It's just, I don't know. Like, it's like, if I wanted to hang out with a condescending asshole or play a condescending asshole, then I'd just be in sales at my job.
Yeah, but that's because you don't like elves, Eric. Is the thing. I mean,
Yeah, certainly, and I'm going to be honest. Part of that comes down to the idea, like, traditionally elves are portrayed as being beautiful, intelligent, and if not enlightened, then more advanced than everyone else around them.
mhm.
Which tends to lend to, at best, mildly condescending, at worst, the biggest dickwad ever. For your average elven personality. I think about these things when I'm playing a non-human. I think about
Right.
the societies that they would have been
Well-
raised in, and how they would react and whatnot. I can't get myself to play an elf that isn't at least mildly condescending.
I guess I don't know. I do think honestly that I do like the sort of the niches that both the honestly I really like the inclusion of the Eladrin in Fourth Ed.
Yeah.
Partially because I they are not the typical elf in a lot of ways.
This is true, and they're considerably more alien than your typical.
Because
elf.
they are very definitively based on the Fae,
Yeah, they're absolutely like high order She from Celtic mythology.
and I really dig that.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that. But it was more the insult of not even letting me have my half orc in the original PBA.
Yeah,
While including 3 different flavors of elf.
you're not gonna let the half elves go, are you, Eric?
No, I am not.
All right. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, see, the thing is, from where I sit, honestly, I just don't care about. I've never cared about half orcs.
That's
As-
fine. That's cool. It's just
And-
I've always sort of had a felt a kinship towards the henchmen, like Cobra troopers.
I know.
And stormtroopers and friggin' Daleks. Henches are awesome. I feel a lot of love for henchmen.
Did you call the Daleks henchmen?
They kind of are. Whenever Davros is around, they're henchmen.
Only when Davros is around. Because they have this pathological need to bring Davros back to life for some reason. And
Yeah, it's totally henchman behavior.
Oh,
Admittance.
at any rate, yeah, I just found it interesting. I really like the selection of races in the Fourth Ed Player's Handbook, for the most part. I mean, they've got
The inclusion of the Dragonborn was cool. I thought it was kind of like, really, you're gonna put dragon men in here? But okay, whatever. I can see why. I would have been all over that when I was in high school.
yeah, honestly,
And
they're
honestly,
actually,
dude, friggin' fire-breathing lizard men. That's awesome.
they're really cool. And the tieflings are actually kind of neat.
Yeah.
And they've got halflings and dwarves and humans and 2.5 flavors of elf.
It was just, you couldn't make space for the fucking half-orc.
They didn't, and
Yeah.
and I understand. I understand why. They're not. They weren't really that popular in a lot of earlier editions, Eric.
But they're their coolest one.
Only to you.
I know mechanically in third ed they suck ass.
Oh my God, yes.
They are fucking terrible mechanically.
And actually, Eric, I can tell you the main reason why they didn't include them.
because why?
Because of all the history and back text about how half-orcs come to be, and they didn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole at the time.
Yeah, but they just rewrote them to being a separate race anyway.
Basically, yeah. They eventually did that, yes, because there were people climbing for half-orcs.
Yeah.
And they eventually found a niche for them.
And even then, that the whole the whole like supposition of how an actual half-breed orc comes about, that adds a lot of pathos to a character just starting out without even
Sure,
trying.
but they don't want to talk about that. They didn't want to talk about it at the time. I mean, I understand not wanting to touch the rape third rail.
Yeah.
I really understand that. I don't.
No, I get that, but like the idea of growing up playing a half-orc who is trying desperately to be a cheerful guy, despite the fact that he's been like he's a monster. Everyone sees him as a monster. He's trying really hard to be a nice guy, and the whole time he's got that resentment simmering underneath. That's a really interesting character to play. I've done it a lot. It's good. I enjoy it.
Sure. And and that's one of the many reasons I don't really have a problem with. I don't have a problem when they include half-orcs. Don't at all. I understand why they didn't, and I personally didn't miss them. Admittedly, when they introduced them to PHB 2, and I saw what their stat block and their abilities were, I started playing them because they're really good. Because
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for mechanics sometimes. I'm a gamist at heart. I can't help it.
Just a wee bit, but that's okay. Yeah, meanwhile, look at the Trollkin and Iron Kingdoms, like, these guys have solid stat block. I kind of wish they didn't. Because I always feel a little guilty about playing something with, as mechanically good.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I know, we've had this discussion,
Yeah.
but...
Ryu Planeswalker in the chat actually asked a question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he basically said, so why did it have to be rape with the whole half-orc thing? Why can't a human just want to bang an orc? Yes, that is definitely true.
That can certainly
Here is the problem. For the vast majority of the history of half-orcs in D&D, going back to first edition, that was the assumed fluff for them because of because of how orcs were generally considered to operate. And and the likelihood of a random human wanting to get together with a random orc was basically considered, no, that won't happen. And because orcs are the sorts of people who would do that. That's why. Now, you could change that going forward, and in fact, many people did.
Yeah. I mean,
but that's
for example, Zarkov in the Slayers game. Zarkov is a half troll. Zarkov is a half troll that isn't the result of sorcery. He was actually bred that way.
Right.
His mom loves it. His parents have a very loving relationship, and his mom bakes cookies. His mom is a troll.
Right. So yes, it's okay, and I'm okay, I'm just saying I understand why they didn't want to touch that with the 10-foot pole at the time. Now, and they basically worked their way around it when they got around to the player's handbook too.
Right.
Also, they really wanted to. They I understand from a mechanical standpoint why they included a lot of the races they did. Like I understand why they included the Eladrin, the Eladrin from a mechanical standpoint, because the Eladrin are, on top of being fluff-wise interesting, are mechanically fascinating.
Yeah, because they've got the free teleport and what are they? Intelligence and Dex.
Yeah, index,
Yeah.
which is a turns out not a very good mechanical combo for fourth ed.
But
Which
they
is
didn't
why,
have one before.
right. So okay, neat. You're like, I understand why they included the Tieflings. I understand why they included the Dragonborn. And so they have all this stuff, and they're like, okay, we're running out of space, and we have to have humans, dwarves, halflings, and normal elves. Now, I can see the argument for saying, well, you could just have the Aladdin in there and not have the normal elves in there. But that will never fly.
Yeah, that would never fly. No, I understand why. Uh, I get it. It's just, fuck you. 3 elves, really? 3 elves and no half orcs.
I still say 2.5.
No. It's like spinach. As soon as you add a little bit to it, it taints everything. I really dislike spinach.
I gathered. Wow, that's another thing we're never going to agree on. But that's not surprising, given that my babysitter when I was very young for a long and my brothers and basically a surrogate grandmother was Greek. So
Right.
I had a lot of spanakopita.
I'm sorry.
Don't apologize. It's good. It's really, really good.
If you say so.
Phyllo dough, spinach, and feta. How can you go wrong?
Sounds great, except for the spinach. Like I said, it taints everything it touches.
So good. One of the things that Eric and I will never agree on. Much like Star Blazer versus Robotech, except that one of these things is something Eric dislikes.
Yeah. But yeah, but back to the whole like playing non-humans. Like I haven't been playing Rook terribly non-humany because I decided that he grew up in the ghettos of Five Fingers. Simply because that's why he's there. That's why he's part of the mercenary company. It makes sense to me. He's a city troll.
Right.
And like there's certain cultural things just haven't come up. That like his curse is almost universally Dunian because duh.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I've noticed that if no one else has.
But yeah, it's like he's pretty familiar with human culture. He was raised around humans, if not like an actual. If not, how am I trying to say this? He's lived around humans all his life. He knows how he's supposed to react to them. He knows what's expected of him, and honestly, he's been raised in largely a different culture. He's got some like being raised in an old school Italian family here in the States.
Right.
Like, yeah, he speaks Italian. Yeah, he knows all that stuff, but he still speaks English with his friends and goes to watch Iron Man 3. So, yeah.
Right.
And it's kind of how I've been trying to play him. If I were to bring in the Fellcaller Stone Sorcerer at some point, then yeah, you're gonna see a whole lot, an entirely different personality based around the idea of like what I understand about Trollkin society.
Right.
Because it's fun thinking that way. It's fun trying to play. It's fun trying to think out as a non-human. I really enjoy that. Even with Rook, like he really finds most humans vaguely disgusting, to look at. And humanoids, like they've got these stupid things in the middle of their faces, these big flaps of cartilage on the side, and these really thin, flexible quills. It's just sort of, yeah. Why would I want to go anywhere near that?
That actually reminds me of one of my favorite conversations in Star Control 2. When you actually start talking to the Vux, who are on one of the alien races, who are these very scaly aliens with sort of long, flexible proboscis mouths with one little tongue, one individual tongue. They only have one eye. It's this gigantic eye in the center of their forehead. Their arms are tentacles, and they think humans are the most repulsive-looking things ever. And they to a human, the Vux looks hideous also.
Right.
And so you first contact one of them in Star Control 2. They're like, "Oh my god, oh god, hang on, let me just turn the vision down on the screen so I don't have to look at you that much. I apologize for being repulsed by you. It's just condition. It's like but oh my god, I shouldn't be this forward about it. Oh, please don't nod like that. Our necks don't share the same range of motion. It looks like your neck's broken."
Yeah, and yeah, that's something else I've always liked doing, is playing with different standards of beauty. Like, of course a Trollkin's going to have a different...
Absolutely.
Have a different standard of beauty than a human, or an elf, or a dwarf. Like, yeah, and I imagine most dwarves look at elves and think, wow, do they stand up?
Yep.
Don't they just, break their limbs when they kick something?
Yeah. Yes. Hypnofun in the chat asked me if I've ever tried to apologize over and over and over again to the Vux in Star Control 2. Yes, I have. Because apparently the war started between the Vux and the humans before the Urkmon show up. Because the humans, on first sighting of this, oh god, those are ugly fuckers. And the Vux tend to be a bit vain.
Right.
But yeah, eventually they basically sort of say, look, you keep apologizing. Look, we're never going to lie with you. You guys are too hideous. I adore them. But yeah, as I said, I have played a fair number of non-humans over the years. So
yeah, and I regularly play non-humans. I'll play humans occasionally. I've very seriously considered playing a human in the Iron Kingdoms game, but the call of Big and Blue was too strong.
I expected you were going to play a Trollkin.
I've played Rifts game. I've never played a non-human in a Rifts game. Actually, I've played in 2 Rifts games. Both times I played humans.
Mm-hmm.
It was decades ago at this point. One was like a headhunter, and I played him very much as sort of like an extra from... I played him very much as I imagine an extra from Escape from New York.
Right.
And the other one was a glitter boy, because giant mirror-coated robot.
Of course. Freaking glitter boys.
I couldn't help it, dude. It's a giant robot.
They're not a giant robot. It's a small battle suit with a giant cannon.
Fine. It was a mech suit. That's enough.
It's the elf of mech suits. You know it, Eric.
Shut up. It was shiny. So very shiny.
Oh God. Yeah. The only reason I say that actually, to be totally honest, is because the vast majority of people I knew who played Rifts, who also wanted to play Glitter Boy, were exactly the same sort of people who had to play elves because elves are so cool.
Yeah,
the elf players that you really don't like, Eric.
Yeah, and the Glitter Boy was more as like, it's a battle suit. It's a disco battle suit. How could I not play this? It was more just the sheer ridiculousness of it.
I believe you. I understand why you played it, Eric. All right. Before we forget, I want to touch on a couple things people in the chat did mention that I may have missed. Solomon actually mentioned when we were talking about the whole thing about the, players choosing monsters to dominate the game. He mentioned that back back then when this was written, most players coming from tabletop army games, you wouldn't be surprised if some people did try non-human characters solely to be overpowered in early playtests. Yeah,
Yeah, no, I can totally see that.
absolutely.
That's actually a very good point that I didn't think of. So props. And yeah, I can totally see like, oh, I want to play a Chaos Lord. And I've had people do that.
Yeah, and Clark One, our friend Peter Shaw, mentions that the second we're reading was basically about Monsters PC, wasn't about demi-humans at all, and he's correct. It was not
Yeah.
directly about that, as I found as I was reading it.
Excuse me.
It was about wanting to play monsters and not demi-humans, and didn't have anything to do with level limits. However, a lot of what he's talking about there really does sort of play back into some of the attitudes about non-humans, about the demi-humans.
Yeah.
But again, it doesn't really have to do with the level limit. That has to do with game balance. A bad attempt at game balance.
Yes.
And again,
Yeah.
given the era when the game was written, I don't fault them for it. I really don't.
And I could totally see like wanting to play a dragon. I've kind of wanted to play a dragon a couple times, and it's a neat idea. But like I couldn't imagine trying to even where to begin trying to play a beholder.
Ow, my
As an
brain!
example. Like how do I just constructing the personality beyond a grr, I will dominate you and devour your innards, barg. Like I can't even think about like how I would construct a personality beyond staple villain's personality for a beholder, because they are so utterly alien.
Yeah. Alright. Let's see, is there anything else I want to touch on from the chat? Or I think we got the rest of it. I caught the rest of it during the... Yeah, someone also mentioned that they loved how they handled the half-orc thing in Order of the Stick. Where they sort of flash back to, Orc Mom, Human Dad, and Love.
Yeah.
Well, they're explaining this, like, the half-orc is explaining this to to a tribe of orcs. And the orc chief and Chief Grognards, frankly, not want to think about that very much. It's like, Beck in the chat says, just play the Beholder as Davros.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot. I'll have to keep that in mind. All right. Before I forget, we should actually answer Tachi's question, Ian Carricker's question. So his question is, hello, Eric, Mecca and Eric. I'm currently preparing to run a multi-generational D&D game. Okay. With which, every generation we go through, we update the edition. Starting back as far back as I can with first edition AD&D, then going to second, third edition, fourth edition, etc. I was wondering if you have any advice for getting started. The general idea of the campaign is setting the groundwork to follow through every following generation. The starting point of magical education, the primary faiths that are starting to emerge, its general plan is for the first campaign, as well as start establishing the feudal families that will be in power for a couple of generations, and inter-country politics. Evolving campaign world, essentially.
Okay. That is so stupendously ambitious that is awesome.
I have to give you a serious amount of kudos for the sheer chutzpah that you have to try pulling this off.
Yeah, that's incredibly ambitious, and I want to hear how it turns out. That sounds
do too.
Awesome.
So, yes, any advice on how to set up the first few sessions of this? I've already mapped out most of the world and have an idea of where the countries would be in, like right now. Wow. Okay.
I don't know. I have no idea. It's this is such a macro scale to what I'm used to dealing with. Honestly,
This is a more macro scale campaign than I'm used to dealing with.
yeah. Like I'm used to dealing with just one guy, or maybe my own character, or maybe a small group of ragtag adventurers. Something of this scale is so. Yeah, I'm not sure where to start with it.
I think it's a wonderful idea, and it's definitely something interesting. I'm fascinated to hear about how you're going to handle the system shifts between generations.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Especially given how different, especially once you go from third to fourth, and the complete removal of Vancian spellcasting.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry.
Well, you just explained that as a different as a sudden breakthrough in magical theory. I mean, that's how I do it. Someone has an Einsteinian level breakthrough in thaumaturgical in applied thaumaturgics, and
Oh, sure. There's a lot of different ways you can handle it.
yeah,
I think it's gonna be interesting to hear how Ian
yeah.
comes up with that. So yeah, advice. From what it sounds like, you've done a lot of good prep work already, and it sounds like you might want to start. I don't know exactly how important you want the player characters to be in sort of how much impact they're going to have on the world. Um, my gut feeling is that each generation should probably, given that they're adventurers, they're going out and they're earning wealth and such, and and probably gaining prestige and position. That each sort of generation will be somewhat more important. So I definitely start small. It'd be my gut feeling.
Yeah.
Start with your classic sort of group of adventurers, saving villages and such. Um,
I'm just thinking about just like reversals of fortune that can happen off screen between generations.
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, your first ed ranger never made a whole lot of money, but or anything, but he suddenly he finds himself inheriting this manor and everything, and his kids end up being nobles, while the wizard goes and founds a college and becomes incredibly wealthy, something stupid happens and he loses everything, and his kid starts off as a gutter snipe thief.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of things you can do with that. And depending on if the characters get married and such with NPCs,
Yeah.
what have you, how that changes,
Or even between players.
right, absolutely. The other thing of note, which someone in the chat mentioned, Beck in the chat mentioned, one that you can do is with if players die during the characters die during the campaign, instead of having them being dead, have it just sort of being permanent injury / retirement that can't be fixed.
Yeah.
So they're forced out of the adventuring life. So that at least the character still stays around in the game world, and it has some influence that way, and that can make things interesting.
Yeah, you're not going to be doing a lot of adventuring when your legs have been bitten off by something horrible.
You've had your arm cut off in a trap.
Yeah.
Pro tip: don't
Lost
take
both your eyes to Black Dragon spray.
Pro tip for this: don't send your players through any module written by Gary Gygax. There are too many death traps in them.
Yes, there are.
And avoid. If you ever think about using any modules, avoid one labeled Mad Goth's Castle. I have stories about that one. It was designed as a tournament module, so it's designed to weed players out so that to establish who the surviving and quote winning player is.
It's always sort of just.
I've always found the concept of tournament RPGs a little weird, but
Yeah,
but they're
Yeah.
they're somewhat pop. They were popular for a while. So
it's just so weird. RPGs by their very nature aren't competitive. So how do you have a tournament? I understand the whole idea is to blitz through the module as quickly as possible, but still,
I can see having a tournament where you're trying to see how many how quickly each individual party can get through, and you parties advance through it, not individual players.
yeah.
But yeah, I can see how Mad God's Castle will be used that way because it is designed to screw with the players in a lot of ways. Also, it often punishes players for being clever. I've come up with a clever solution. Well, I should say, yeah, I've come up with a clever solution for this. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you should never punish players for being
Well,
clever.
but again, for the type of thing it is,
You should punish them for being not clever enough.
Well, it's punishing them for trying to circumvent parts of the module, basically.
Okay.
You're supposed to go in here and have this encounter. I don't want to go in that way. I want to do this. Oh, I'm sorry.
Right.
You're screwed. So I'll give you some examples. So I'll actually talk about this a little bit because I've talked about it before, but I'm not sure if I've done it on the show. And we've got time. So, So the module basically is it's set in the Underdark, and you sent for various reasons to investigate this layer of this mad wizard Madgoth, who's known to be a crazy wizard into weird experiments and stuff. And for whatever reason, you're sent in there to investigate. And you go down into the caverns under there, and you see off in the distance a tiny castle behind a large, large energy barrier. And you're like, well, that's where the castle's supposed to be. This is very odd. The energy barrier seems to prove no barrier to entry, and when you walk through it, everyone is shrunk to being about 6 inches high. And so there are a lot of encounters, a lot of stuff, and most of the monsters are shrunk, but not all of them. For instance...
Oh my god, it's a full-size Sturge!
That happens. They're bad. There's a section in there where basically there's a bit of a maze and stuff that you have to wander through to get to the castle. There's a section in there where you have to fight trolls in an anti-magic zone. That one's fun.
Oh, that's going to be rough, yeah.
Yeah. But eventually you get to the castle. And there's a moat around the castle filled with a thick green substance. It's a green slime that wasn't shrunk.
Oh.
Fortunately, there are levers and such you can lever up to solve a puzzle to create a path to the gate of the castle. Now you might be thinking, it's a castle. I could just we're at least like the module is designed for like 10th level parties. We all probably have ways to fly.
Yeah.
So why don't we just fly up to the roof and go in that way? Oh, but that's the wrong answer. You see, as you fly up the first 10 feet, there are arrow traps that fire off and shoot at you. Then the next story up it's spear traps. Then things start escalating a bit, shall we say? Because next up are lightning bolts.
Then death rays.
No.
Then they're firing whole dragons via trebuchet.
No. The fourth flow is far more insidious than that. Dispel magic traps.
Oh. Yeah.
To turn off your flight to drop you into the green slime below.
That's a good one, actually.
And after that, you can go up to the roof. And if you're smart when you get up, if you get through all of that, and you're smart and cast Detect Magic, you'll notice that the roof is covered with magical traps. And there are doors onto the roof, and if you come out of the roof via the doors, you're fine. But if you land there without having opened the door, all sorts of awful magical traps go off simultaneously and completely destroy you and ruin you.
So just hover 6 inches off the ground and open the door.
I think
I'm sure there is some.
There's some shenanigans get around that too. I forget what they are, but it's basically you're screwed. Don't do that. So it's like, oh my god, why? Anyways,
so if you really wanted them to solve the puzzle, just state there seems to be some sort of anti-fly field, and I'm sorry, it doesn't work.
They'll find a way around that.
Yeah, and that's fine. Being clever is part of the game. Now,
there are reasons they don't want you to go in through the roof. Is the thing. They don't want you to miss the encounter you get when you come in through the front door.
Right.
Which are the 2 fairy dragons that were not shrunk. Which is hilarious. And they don't want you to miss that. I understand that. And there's a bunch of other exploration you can do in the castle and such. And eventually you figure out what's going on and solve stuff. And you can eventually get to the big treasure room at the end, which is the armory Maggoth set up. Which is awesome. And there's these big cases all over the place filled with basically every weapon ever published.
Nice.
However, there is a guardian, which is a Death Knight. With a magical sword.
Of course.
It's a +4 sword of sharpness.
Yeah, okay.
On top of that, you ready for the good part? It's an intelligent evil sword.
Of course it is.
That will try to corrupt whoever wields it.
Of course it is.
Now, the cases that all these weapons are in are made of unbreakable glass steel.
Okay.
And they're like enchanted so you can't break the glass. And the only way that you can interact with it is by taking a weapon, you can press it on the case to swap it for any other weapon in the case of equal or lesser value. Which just means that you could take the Sword of Twilight Doom, which is the sword, and swap it for something that your party could use. However, my favorite part about the whole module in there is, if the party finds some way to break the unbreakable cases...
I will give them props for just assuming, like, Yeah, they'll probably figure something out. So
If they do this, they are completely fucked. Because everything in the room, unless they really planned ahead,
right.
everything in the room is immediately teleported and scattered across the entirety of the negative material plane.
Oh, them too.
Yeah. The players
Oh.
too, yes.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah. Bye-bye! Yeah, did you cast negative plane protection? No? Well, you're fucked. You did? Well, you better get the hell out of there really fucking fast. Because it'll eventually wear out. Yeah, don't run this module. It's not a good module. It's hilarious. I've read it once. Not really getting the full having the full impact from just skimming through it. Yeah, the party survived it. Mostly because I warned them away from the bad stuff. Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah.
I read it because I liked the conceit of the sort of the shrunken castle where everyone's shrunk down and some of the monsters are shrunk, some of them
Except
aren't.
some of the monsters, yeah.
I liked all that stuff. The rest of it was like, wow. So yeah, that was a special encounter module. But yeah, back to Ian's little idea. I think it's a great campaign idea, and
yeah, I think it's really cool.
I hope to hear more about it in future. You have anything else you want to say about what we've been talking about today, Eric? Because I think we're about done with the show, I think.
Oh, monsters are cool. I mean, and not just playing them just because, like, grr, I'm going to be gribbly, but, like, really think about, like, how they would view the world differently. That's what makes playing monsters fun. Also,
Yep.
they look cool.
Honestly, my personal take is I find having the non-humans in the party it's more interesting when don't completely dominate the party.
Yeah.
I think it's more interesting to have one or two non-humans in a party mostly of humans. I think that's more interesting, personally, but I'm not going to fault someone for wanting to play something whatever they want to play. I mean, I never do.
Right.
Unless it's particularly stupid.
I want to play a half drow, half vampire dragonkin.
No.
Yeah.
That's one of the few times I'll say no. Also, if you say you want to play a 4th edition Revenant, I'll say no, because you're a cheesemonger and playing the most broken race in 4th edition. No, go away. Shoo.
No, you're not allowed. Stop it.
I do not allow the Revenants in my 4th ed games, because they're broken. Oh my god. At any rate, I hope you all enjoyed this rambling and bizarre episode of the Surly Grognards.
You know, it's not that bizarre.
Well, no.
Rambling, yeah, but we're always rambling.
We'll be back next week, as usual. Monday, we record the show live here on twitch.tv/MechaGM at 7 p.m. Eastern. If you've got, we try to save time at the end of each question, at the end of each show for questions from the viewers. Additionally, if you want to contact us with questions you'd like to answer on the show, you can send them to us. Our email address is surlygrognards@yahoo.com, surlygrognards@yahoo.com. You can also post your questions on our forums, which you can find at mechagm.forumer.com. We also, if you've got feedback for us, positive or negative, please feel free to send it to us. Or if you've got show topic suggestions, we love those to pieces. Send them to any of those places also.
We really do.
I tend to tweet out right before the show is going live on my Twitter handle, which you can find, which is @MechaGM. Keep an eye on that, and you'll know when I'm going live with stuff. And that's basically it. I think that's the usual end of show spiel, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Excellent. Good. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you all had fun. We'll be back next week with something or other. Some other rambling mess of incoherency that hopefully will be entertaining in some way, shape, or form.
Probably won't be.
We'll be back. See you guys. Thanks, and keep on gaming.
Later.